Let's talk about some of the common things that come up when someone has an awakening. Maybe that's you, as you've been having these clarities and some of the veils are dropping. Or perhaps it was the awakening that one of your teachers had that's being pointed to. But there's some common slippery slope pitfalls that can happen. Let's talk about them. So number one is getting lost in transcendence. This one happens a lot. And it's kind of easy to do. So if you are finding yourself or your teacher is entirely focused on formlessness, and the formlessness has way more value than the form, it's a little bit of a slippery slope to get lost in the transcendence, which really means being lost in the place of formlessness. That's the point, or that's the juice, or that's where we want to be, and that's really the focus of all this. And it's to make the form very, very secondary and less valuable. And this creeps in from a spiritual culture, which is different than spiritual reality. In the culture of spirituality, we have a lot of value on spirit as sort of a higher form, and form, your body, your life, money, sex, desire, these are lower forms. Now this is a spiritual cultural value. It's not true in reality, because in reality there's only one thing happening: form. The point that God is making, the point of formlessness, is form. That's the only thing happening here. There's only one thing happening. All of this formlessness is coming into form. And really, if we come from that spiritual point of view, it's very easy to trump this formlessness. And it's very easy to get lost in transcendence. So that's the first little pitfall. The second pitfall that can happen, which is very similar to being lost in transcendent, and in fact it's pretty much attached to it, but it's wanting to manipulate form in order for it to maybe have deeper fulfillments or sort of prove your spiritual prowessness. And we can see this a lot with spiritual teaching. This is less to do with actual awakenings into reality and more to do with kind of fourth dimensional and fifth dimensional stuff, is where we want to levitate and experience out of bodies, and we want to do all kinds of fancy manipulative stuff. And this is a bit of a common pitfall, because it's very easy to get this little tiny bit of a me in there that has this agenda. And this is, of course, not what's going on. I mean, we have a really great example of this, where we have the story of Jesus who walks on water. And this is not me dissing on Jesus at all, but just sort of pointing out what I'm trying to talk about as a little pitfall here, is that the miracle is that water is wet. Like, that's the miracle. So there's all this nothingness, all this formlessness, all this spacious pre-form that's coming into form as this wet, liquid stuff. That's a miracle. So who's the extra little me that's then going to walk on it and pretend it's solid? And that little bit of a me that has a little bit of an agenda about form and the way form can manifest, and basically how to kind of get out of form with these extra spiritual powers or this extra spiritual prowessness. This is a really common second pitfall. Another thing that can come up for a lot of people, and it's really easy, is to feel like you've had a very genuine awakening, but you've messed up somehow. You kind of did something wrong, because suddenly you are experiencing feelings like rage, feelings like grief, and suddenly there's this like, I did something wrong, because why is this showing up in all this bliss and all this oneness and all this source? And again, what's happening here is very similar. It's another kind of that spiritual cultural place, different than spiritual reality. In spiritual culture, we have this hierarchy of emotions, and we have joy and happiness as the highest, and also as a displaying of sort of highest spiritual evolution. And the lower forms, like anger and grief and rage, are signs that you are not spiritually evolved. Now, of course, this is cultural. This is not reality. In reality, God has no problem with these feelings. In fact, this is what you're discovering, is that feelings of rage or feelings of grief, these are very clear messages. They're messages coming from clarity that represent your no. So rage is a no. Grief is this tender boundary. Over here in spiritual culture, these boundaries are kind of frowned on. But in life, boundaries are a true aspect of all nature, because we have these polarities in form. We have everything has an opposite. So there's boundaries built in. It's an essential aspect of it. So having these intense feelings showing up, like all this rage or all this grief, is not a sign that you messed up or that there's something wrong with your awakening. Or, lots of times people project that, that person couldn't have a real awakening because they're in this egoic rage. That actually experiencing feelings is a really big part of waking up to reality. Another little slippery point or common pitfall is feeling like you've messed up or something's gone wrong because it's a really, really intense ride. And this is really the case. And a lot of people in the private practice call me, and I talk to people all over the world that are experiencing very genuine, very real enlightenments. And it's an intense ride. And I don't mean intense like I had a child and now my life is totally changed. I don't mean like I had a car accident and broke every bone in my body and now I live in a wheelchair. I mean, take that and dial it up about 100%. It's such an intense ride. You lose all time and timelessness. Now, this is not this blissful, hanged out place. This is a place, lots of times, of tremendous confusion. Lots of times people are experiencing all these timelines meeting at the same place, and they can't figure out which lifetime they're in or which timeline is happening because they're all colliding. We get crazy kriyas and kundalinis, and you're jumping around like a crazy Mexican jumping bean. You can have everything dissolve because the cost of a true awakening costs you everything, and you don't even know what everything is till everything is taken from you. And the intensity of this is huge, and it's like they didn't tell you this, and they don't tell. It's not like the teachers are lying when they're not talking about how intense it is, nor is it that they didn't have it. And when you're sitting in front of a teacher who has this kind of soft, blissed out, nothing seems to change, it's all good, it doesn't look like that intense ride happened or is happening, and you think something's gone wrong. But it's not actually true. It's a crazy, crazy intense ride. They just don't tell you about it because it's not a part of the teaching. It's not part of the pointer that they're pointing to. But Lord, it's an intense ride. And lastly, the really important slippery slope to be aware of is the whole unsolicited advice or unsolicited coaching. And this is so easy to do because with an awakening, all of a sudden there's this insight. All of this insight shows up. And with that kind of insight, you want to share. And this is less the case with people who have had a full awakening or a real, full, complete awakening, because they don't really see a problem and there's a lot of love and everybody's equal. So this isn't really happening there, but let's face it, words like awakening or enlightenment, these are huge words that mean a lot of things. So there's a gradation. So as the veils drop, there's these insights, and it just seems really easy when you meet someone who's in pain or having a hard time, and they, you could just give them a little suggestion, give them a little bit of advice. And the truth is, it doesn't serve you, and it doesn't serve them, because everyone is God. Everyone is the one. Everyone is equal. Everyone has equal access. And unless someone directly asks you, it's not your business. And that's a really, really easy one to slip into, the unsolicited advice. We have it everywhere, across all over the place, but we certainly see it as a kind of a common pitfall that happens here. So, of course, there's so many others, and it's a juicy and fun topic, but that's me skimming off the surface.